Ohio Congressman Jim Jordan got some free history lessons. Seems like he didn't know too much about U.S. history. And this all happened on Twitter when he had suggested that maybe the founding fathers would have opposed coronavirus-related restrictions like stay-at-home orders. So here's what he tweeted. He said, 6 million Americans are subject to a stay-at-home order or curfew. 11 million are right here in Ohio. What would the founders say? So, John, before I go to the free history lesson, what do you think? I mean, maybe he has a really great point here. Maybe the founders wouldn't do anything. Maybe the founders would allow more Americans to die, during a pandemic. What do you think?
Yeah, well, what I think is I think that there should be some sort of like certification course that you take before you get to ask questions, because most people can't be trusted with them. There should be some sort of like, I don't know, like I feel like there should be a real life Clippy that like pops up when someone asks a question like that and says, hey, did you know that questions don't have to be rhetorical? You can actually try to answer them yourself before you ask everybody. You could Google it. Totally. You could Google what the founders think about immunizing and quarantines and all that stuff. That's a thing you could do. You've got a computer. You probably have a phone in your pocket. So I would say I want people to stop asking questions that they can answer themselves.
100%. And, it's meant to be a rhetorical question. He's trying to pretend as though, the founding fathers would be totally fine with doing absolutely nothing in response to this pandemic. But as several history professors noted in response to Jim Jordan, he's wrong. Founding fathers actually did take some action when it came to these types of situations in the past. So professor of history at Princeton University responds and says, there was a massive smallpox epidemic during the American Revolution. Washington quarantined the infected, refused to let people from hotspots travel to his army, and even sent 1,000 soldiers to Boston to prevent the spread there. You should try reading a book sometime. Let's go to another professor from Georgetown who says the founders would probably have taken sensible precautions. When Philadelphia, the U.S. capital, had a yellow fever outbreak in 1793, Washington and pretty much the entire federal government left the city. Let's give you another one. History professor at Central Michigan University responded and said, in July of 1776, the entire city of Boston was closed so they could safely inoculate for smallpox. It lasted 3 months and no one could leave once it began. They did it again in 1778. The founders would be proud that the government was protecting its citizens from disease. So there you have it.
Yeah. And so this is a learning opportunity. I mean, the rhetorical question could have been, but he can't, because he's a regular person, he can't be bothered to actually look it up. The knowledge being offered to him is a learning opportunity. And so let's find out. Was it a genuine question? Does he care what the founders thought about that? Because he's now finding out. So is he going to suddenly turn around and say, oh, my God, I didn't realize this, but the patriotic thing is to support quarantines and that sort of thing? No, because, again, like we were talking about with Trump and with Hawley, the Republicans and the right don't want elected officials. They want posters. They want people who are going to post on Twitter. Yep. They're going to say, and this morning I called it the Charlie Kirk school of conservatism. It's like, just say something stupid and then put the thinking face or whatever, and you'll get 20,000 retweets, and no one will be like, hey, wait, could we have tried to answer that question before we asked it? Is there actual knowledge out there that can inform me about this area? But it doesn't actually happen, and we can laugh at him, but none of his fans are like, yeah, that really is embarrassing, or I really had higher standards for you, Jim Jordan. That's not happening.
Well, this is why we shouldn't elect wrestling coaches to be in Congress if they have not passed a basic history and civics course first. Boston had a complete lockdown in 1778 after a smallpox outbreak. Many of the founders were there. They abided by it for months. So look, I think if you were a bartender, wrestling coach, whatever, of course you can, serve in elected office. But your point is undeniable, John. Jim Jordan should know this. Jim Jordan knows how to research this if he genuinely wants to know. All Jim Jordan is doing is engaging in Twitter activism to make it appear as though he's, working hard as a congressman. In reality, he's doing quite the opposite. And the hundreds of thousands of Americans who have died during this pandemic is just proof of that. The fecklessness, the carelessness, the lack of compassion coming from our lawmakers is pretty evident in response to this coronavirus pandemic. And for him to put out some ridiculous rhetorical question to make it appear as though or imply that our founding fathers would just tell the American people, yeah, don't worry, we're not going to do anything, just deal with it, is beyond ridiculous. They love rewriting history. They love it.